If you had told me 6 months ago that a piece of plastic buried under greasy napkins would change my entire life, I would have laughed. Back then, I thought betrayal came with a dramatic slap, a screaming match, or a suitcase thrown out onto the front lawn. Turns out it can come in absolute silence, hidden at the bottom of a trash can, surrounded by yesterday's leftovers. My name's Curtis. I'm 36, married to a woman named Mallory for almost a decade. We weren't some fairy tale couple, but we had our rhythm, inside jokes, grocery runs, late-night movie marathons when we both couldn't sleep. I thought we understood each other without needing to say much. I thought loyalty was something we didn't even have to discuss anymore, like breathing. Mallory started acting distant around February. At first, it was small things, a cold shoulder here, a tight smile there. Then came the nights when she'd work late, the weekends she'd be visiting her sister 3 towns over. I didn't pry. I didn't want to be that insecure husband. I trusted her. Foolish, isn't it, how trust blinds you? It was a rainy Thursday when it happened. She was out again, some networking dinner, for work. I was cleaning up the kitchen, trying to be useful when I took out the trash and noticed something odd. A box. Pink and white. Curiosity made me pull it out. That's when I saw it, the positive pregnancy test hidden inside like a dirty secret. I froze. We hadn't been intimate in nearly half a year. Not once. I knew because I kept telling myself it would get better, that we just needed to reconnect, that real marriages went through dry spells. But standing there, holding that undeniable evidence, my whole body went numb. Whose child was this? I didn't throw a tantrum. I didn't rage. I just shut down. Like a light switch. I put the box back exactly where I found it, packed the trash tighter, and set it by the door. And then I sat on the couch in the dark, waiting for Mallory to come home, rehearsing 1,000 different conversations in my head, none of them ending the way I wanted. I didn't know it then, but that night was only the first step into a nightmare much bigger than a hidden pregnancy. Mallory came home just after 11, shaking off the rain like nothing was wrong. She kicked off her heels by the door, tossed her coat over the banister, and flashed me a tired smile that didn't even reach her eyes. I watched her carefully, every movement, every breath. She walked right past the trash bag sitting by the door, the same one hiding the truth about our marriage without so much as a glance. "You're up late," she said casually, moving toward the kitchen like she hadn't detonated a bomb in our lives. I wanted to ask right then. I wanted to demand an answer, throw the pregnancy test in her face, and make her choke on whatever lie she had prepared. But something held me back. Some instinct deeper than anger told me to wait, to watch. Confrontation now would give her time to spin a story, rehearse her alibi. I needed to see the truth in her actions, not just hear it in her words. So I smiled back. Played dumb. Asked how the networking dinner went. She lied effortlessly. Some big new client, late conversations about quarterly projections, a few drinks, all very above board. If I hadn't known better, I might have believed her. That hurt more than anything, realizing how good she had become at lying to my face. We went to bed like it was any other night, her back turned toward me, her breathing slow, and even within minutes. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling like a ghost trapped in a life that wasn't mine anymore. The next morning, I took the day off work without telling her. I waited until she left, then went through her things, something I had never done before in all our years together. Her purse, her laptop bag, even her car. That's when I found it. Stuffed into the side pocket of her car door, almost like she forgot it was there, was a receipt. A hotel room downtown. Paid for in cash. Dated 2 weeks ago, right around the time she said she had been visiting her sister. My hands shook as I stared at it. Not from rage. Not even sadness. Just cold, pure realization, this wasn't some mistake. This wasn't a one-time slip. She had planned it. She had built a separate life behind my back. I sat there for a long time, gripping that crumpled piece of paper, thinking about all the little signs I ignored. The sudden weekend trips. The new lingerie I never saw her wear. The way she guarded her phone like it held state secrets. Every memory I thought was safe twisted into something ugly, poisoned. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't just confront her empty-handed. I needed proof, a real proof, not just a positive test and a suspicious receipt. I needed to catch her in the act, strip away every excuse she could possibly invent. Only then could I burn down the web of lies she had spun around us. And so, with my heart hammering in my chest, I made a plan. A plan that would tear the mask off the woman I thought I knew and reveal the stranger hiding underneath. The next few days were the longest of my life. I moved through the house like a ghost, pretending everything was fine, while inside I was meticulously preparing for the confrontation that would change everything. I bought a small voice recorder and installed a discreet camera in the living room, pointed directly at the front door. If she was bringing someone into our home, into my home, I would know. I wasn't about to accuse her based on instinct or a crumpled hotel receipt. I wanted undeniable, irrefutable proof. During those days, Mallory was the perfect actress. She kissed me goodbye in the mornings, texted me little updates about her busy day at work, and even brought home my favorite takeout one night, laughing like nothing in the world could be wrong. It was almost impressive if it hadn't been so disgusting. On the third night, I got my answer. She left the house around 7 p.m. claiming she had a late meeting. I watched her through the window as she pulled out of the driveway, her car disappearing down the street. I waited 15 minutes, just enough time for her to get far enough away, then I pulled up the camera feed on my phone. For a while, nothing. Just the empty living room bathed in the soft glow of a lamp. Then a knock at the door. And there he was, a man I had never seen before. Tall, lean, confidently stepping into the house like he belonged there. My stomach turned as I watched him look around briefly, then head straight for the staircase that led to the bedroom Mallory and I once shared. I didn't need to see any more. I sat there, clutching my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white, feeling something inside me crack open. This wasn't just betrayal. This was humiliation, degradation, a complete mockery of the life I had built with her. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the kitchen, staring at the front door, replaying that footage over and over in my head until every detail was seared into my brain. Her laughter. His cocky body language. The way she leaned into him like it was the most natural thing in the world. By the time the sun rose, I wasn't the same man who had found that pregnancy test buried under the trash. That man was gone. This man, the man sitting at the kitchen table in yesterday's clothes, unshaven, hollow-eyed, he was someone new. Someone who had nothing left to lose. I knew I had two choices: confront her immediately and risk her spinning some pathetic story, or let her dig herself even deeper, gather more evidence, and then detonate it all at once, leaving no room for escape, no space for denial. I chose the second. I called into work and told them I needed some time off for personal reasons. Then I spent the next 2 days gathering everything: bank statements, her phone records, her GPS history, anything that could show the full extent of her double life. And the deeper I dug, the uglier it got. Hotel stays under fake names. Late-night cash withdrawals from our joint account. A second phone line I never knew about. She wasn't just cheating. She was planning a future with this man while living off my trust, my money, my name. By the time Mallory walked back through the door on the third night, smiling and humming to herself like the world was hers for the taking, I was ready. She had no idea what was waiting for her. And she definitely didn't expect that the first words out of my mouth would freeze her blood cold. Mallory breezed into the house like she didn't have a care in the world, her heels clicking lightly on the hardwood floors, her phone glued to her hand as she giggled at some text message I didn't want to imagine. She didn't even notice me sitting in the living room at first, lights dimmed, the faint hum of the TV filling the silence. When she finally looked up and saw me there, her whole body tensed for just a fraction of a second, a twitch barely noticeable to anyone who wasn't watching for it. But I saw it. I saw everything now. "Hey, babe," she said, tossing her bag onto the couch and slipping off her jacket. "You're home early." I smiled, a smile so fake it practically cracked my face. "Took some time off. We should talk." Her expression faltered. She tried to mask it, but the hint of panic flickered behind her eyes like a dying light bulb. She perched on the edge of the couch, hands fidgeting with her phone, clearly debating whether to bolt or play along. "What's up?" she asked, voice just a little too bright. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, voice steady. "I know." There was the freeze. The slow, creeping horror dawning on her face. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, like a fish gasping for air. I didn't let her speak. "I know about the hotel," I said quietly. "I know about him. I know about the second phone. And I know about the pregnancy test you tried to hide." The room went so silent I could hear the ticking of the kitchen clock. For a second I thought she might faint. But instead she laughed. A dry, humorless, broken sound. "It's not what you think," she said, the most pathetic line in the history of betrayal. "Then explain it to me," I challenged, my voice still eerily calm. "Explain how you're pregnant when we haven't been intimate in nearly half a year. Explain the hotel stays. The lies. The missing money. Go ahead, Mallory. I'm all ears." Tears welled up in her eyes, a performance so convincing it might have worked once, but not anymore. She babbled something about loneliness, about feeling neglected, about how it just happened and she didn't mean to fall for him. I let her talk. I let her bury herself deeper with every desperate excuse, every sob, every trembling hand gesture. And then I dropped the final bomb. "I have everything," I said, sliding a manila envelope across the coffee table toward her. Inside were the printouts, the receipts, the phone logs, the GPS data, stills from the security camera showing her welcoming her lover into our house. Our home. She opened the envelope with shaking fingers, flipping through the damning evidence. With every page, her face crumbled a little more. "You're leaving," I said flatly. "Tonight. I've already spoken to a lawyer. The paperwork's ready. You'll sign it or you'll explain all of this to a courtroom full of strangers." For the first time, real terror flashed across her face. Not regret. Not remorse. Terror, the fear of losing her cushy lifestyle, her financial safety net, the reputation she had carefully crafted among her friends. "I don't have anywhere to go," she whispered. "Not my problem," I said, standing up. "You made your choice a long time ago." I watched as she packed a few things into a bag, sobbing the whole time, trying to plead with me, trying to grab at pieces of the life she had shattered with her own hands. But I didn't waver. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply stood there, silent and immovable, while she realized she had lost everything. And when she finally walked out that door, looking smaller than I had ever seen her, a strange calm settled over me. I wasn't broken. I wasn't ruined. I was free. Or so I thought. Because the real nightmare was only just beginning. For a few days after Mallory left, the house felt like a tomb. Her perfume still lingered in the hallway. Her toothbrush sat untouched in the bathroom. Everywhere I looked, there were echoes of the life I thought we were building together. But despite the hollow ache gnawing at the edges of my mind, I forced myself to move forward. I had no choice. She had already burned the bridge between us. There was no rebuilding, no forgiveness, no looking back. The divorce process moved fast, almost too fast. Mallory didn't fight it. She signed every document my lawyer put in front of her without protest, her hands shaking the entire time. Maybe she thought cooperating would earn her some favor. Maybe she hoped I would show her mercy. But mercy wasn't on the table anymore. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought once her signature dried on the papers, I'd be free. But like a parasite, her betrayal had deeper roots than I realized. It started with a phone call from the bank. "Mr. Aldridge, we're just confirming your recent account activity. A $7,000 wire transfer initiated this morning?" I nearly dropped the phone. "I didn't authorize any wire transfer," I said sharply, heart hammering in my chest. The voice on the other end grew careful. "It was initiated from your joint account. Authorized by your wife." "Ex-wife," I corrected, ice filling my veins. "I'll be there within the hour. Freeze everything." When I arrived, the evidence was all there in black and white. Mallory, somehow still listed as a co-signer on one of our older accounts, had tried to drain what little was left. She wasn't just content with wrecking our marriage. She wanted to salt the earth on her way out too. My lawyer moved quickly to file charges, but even that didn't stop her. Over the next few weeks, strange things started happening. Someone slashed the tires on my truck. My mailbox was ripped off its post and thrown into the neighbor's yard. Anonymous calls at all hours, breathing into the receiver before hanging up. At first, I thought maybe it was just coincidence, random bad luck. But deep down I knew. Mallory wasn't finished with me. I started documenting everything, filing police reports, installing more cameras around the house. Every day became a battle between trying to rebuild my life and staying one step ahead of whatever new chaos she was orchestrating. One evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon and the house was bathed in deep shadows, I spotted a car idling across the street. Not a neighbor's car. Not a delivery vehicle. Just a beat-up black sedan with tinted windows, sitting there like a spider waiting for a fly. I stared at it through the blinds, heart pounding, debating whether to confront whoever was inside. Before I could decide, the car sped off, tires screeching, leaving nothing behind but the sour stench of burnt rubber and dread. The next morning, tucked under my windshield wiper, was a note scrawled in messy handwriting. "You ruined her life. Now we'll ruin yours." No signature. No clues. Just a threat hanging heavy in the air. I realized then that I wasn't just dealing with a vengeful ex-wife. I was dealing with people who had a stake in her lies, people who saw me as the villain in their twisted little story. I had two choices, live in fear or fight back smarter. And I wasn't about to let Mallory or anyone else write the ending to my story. Not without a war. I wasn't the kind of man who enjoyed conflict. I never went looking for trouble. But standing there in my driveway, crumpled threat note in one hand and the rising taste of anger in the back of my throat, I realized something important. If they wanted a war, they get one, but it would be on my terms. No wild confrontations. No reckless moves. They were playing dirty. I would play smarter. The first step was tightening my defenses. I upgraded every lock on the house. Installed motion sensor lights that could blind a deer at 50 yards. Upgraded my home security system to the same one used by jewelry stores and banks. Cameras now covered every angle of my property, inside and out. If anyone so much as sneezed near my lawn, I'd have them on tape. But I didn't stop there. I hired a private investigator. Not the kind with a cheap suit and a bad mustache. A real professional, ex-military, sharp as a scalpel, discreet. His name was Bennett, and he had a reputation for getting results without leaving a trace. I gave him everything, the footage, the note, the details about Mallory and her new circle of friends. It didn't take long. Within a week, Bennett delivered a thick folder to my doorstep. Inside were photographs, phone records, addresses. Mallory hadn't just fallen for one guy, she had tangled herself with a group of people who made their living preying on others. Small-time criminals, grifters, people who saw me, a steady, hard-working man with assets, as a golden goose to pluck clean. Her new boyfriend was already on probation for fraud and theft. Another one of her so-called friends had 3 restraining orders against him in different states. They were parasites, and Mallory had willingly invited them into her life and by extension into mine. But the worst part wasn't the background checks or the criminal records. It was what Bennett found hidden away in an online forum buried deep under anonymous usernames and encrypted messaging apps. A thread started by someone who matched Mallory's known aliases. The subject line made my blood run cold. Ways to get even with cheating husbands, make them pay. Inside, pages and pages of suggestions. Fake abuse allegations. Anonymous tips to employers. Financial sabotage. Strategies to drag out divorce proceedings and drain every cent. Even fake claims of pregnancy complications to wring sympathy and money. I realized with sick clarity the pregnancy test wasn't just a lie. It was a weapon. A prop she could wave around in court, paint herself as the innocent, abandoned wife. A tool to squeeze me dry before disappearing into whatever gutter she called home now. I sat there for a long time after reading that file, staring at the wall, feeling like the ground beneath me had shifted into quicksand. It wasn't enough to protect myself anymore. I had to dismantle her entire plan before it destroyed me. That night, I made 3 phone calls. One to my lawyer, telling him to prepare for a scorched earth battle. One to a cybersecurity firm to ensure my accounts and identity were locked down tighter than Fort Knox. And one to Bennett to dig deeper to find out not just what Mallory and her crew were planning, but where they were hiding, what leverage they had, and how I could turn it all against them. Because if they thought I would go down easy, they were about to learn something crucial. You don't set fire to a man's life and expect him to just stand there watching the flames. You run. And you pray he never finds you. The next phase of my plan required patience, something I hadn't been known for in the past. But the stakes were too high now. This wasn't just about a broken marriage anymore, it was about survival. About protecting everything I had built from the people Mallory had unleashed into my world. Bennett moved like a ghost. Within days, he tracked Mallory to a rundown apartment complex on the far edge of the city, a place where the blinds stayed permanently shut and police sirens were a nightly soundtrack. She was living there with the same man who had walked into my house that night, along with 2 other lowlifes who rotated in and out like cockroaches looking for crumbs. They weren't working 9 to 5s, that much was clear. Most days they barely left the apartment except for late-night runs to God knows where. Micah told me they were planning something. Something bigger than slashing tires or stealing a few $1,000s. Then came the break. Bennett intercepted messages between Mallory's boyfriend and a known fixer, a guy who specialized in manufacturing evidence for legal cases. Fake assault photos. Phony medical records. False witness statements. The kind of dirty tricks that could tie me up in court for years, cost me everything, maybe even land me behind bars if I wasn't careful. It wasn't just about bleeding me dry financially anymore. They wanted to destroy me. When Bennett laid all this out on my kitchen table, something in me snapped. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't sad. I wasn't confused. I was clear. Clearer than I had ever been in my life. If they wanted a war, I was going to bring it to their doorstep. But I wasn't going to get my hands dirty the way they did. No. That would make me no better than them. I needed them to collapse under the weight of their own crimes. I needed the law to crush them so thoroughly and so publicly that there would be no coming back. I started by leaking anonymous tips to the authorities. Tax fraud. Identity theft. Unlicensed business activities. I provided dates, addresses, names, all backed up with hard evidence courtesy of Bennett's surveillance. Then I made sure the fixer's side business found its way onto the radar of some very serious federal agencies, the kind that didn't appreciate forged documents floating around their courts. It didn't take long for the dominoes to fall. One morning, barely 2 weeks after the first tip, I watched from a safe distance as unmarked cars swarmed the apartment complex. Mallory's boyfriend was dragged out in cuffs, shouting obscenities. One of the other men tried to run but didn't make it far. Within hours, the news was all over the local feeds, a criminal ring busted for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. And Mallory? Mallory was nowhere to be seen. For a brief moment, a sick sense of victory pulsed through me. Justice, swift and brutal. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Mallory was still out there, still dangerous, still desperate. That night, after the news broke, I received a text message from an unknown number. "You think this is over? You have no idea what's coming." I stared at the screen, feeling that old familiar chill crawl up my spine. She wasn't finished. She never played fair. She never stopped when she could twist the knife just a little deeper. But what Mallory didn't understand, what she would never understand, was that the man she betrayed wasn't the same man she left behind. She thought she had broken me. She didn't realize all she had done was strip away the last pieces of the person who would have ever shown her mercy. And the next time she made a move, I would be ready. More ready than she could possibly imagine. The days after the arrests were strangely quiet. Too quiet. For the first time in months, my phone didn't ring with threats. No cars lingered outside my house. No anonymous letters slipped through my mail slot. Just silence, heavy, unfamiliar, almost unnerving. But I wasn't fooled. I knew Mallory was still out there, licking her wounds, plotting her next move. She was too stubborn, too entitled, too consumed by her own bitterness to simply walk away. I stayed ready. I kept my cameras running, my security system armed, my lawyer on speed dial. And then, like a ghost finally realizing it couldn't haunt a house anymore, she disappeared. Weeks turned into months. Mallory didn't show up to contest the divorce proceedings. She didn't show up at court when the financial judgments hit. In her absence, everything went through: the annulment of joint accounts, the forfeiture of claims to any shared assets, the restraining order that would land her in jail the second she stepped within 50 feet of me. One morning, my lawyer called me with final confirmation. "It's done, Curtis," he said. "Everything's finalized. She can't touch you anymore." I stood there on my porch, the sun just starting to climb over the trees, phone pressed to my ear, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I exhaled. A real breath. A clean breath. Like I had been holding my lungs hostage for months without even realizing it. I wasn't just free of her. I was free of the life I thought I had to accept. I spent the next few weeks reclaiming my world, piece by piece. I redecorated the house, stripping it of every memory of Mallory. I donated everything she left behind: the clothes, the jewelry, the framed photos where she smiled with practiced perfection. Gone. Erased. I even traded in my old truck for a new one, bright, clean, unapologetically mine. And for the first time in a long time, I started living like a man who remembered who he was before betrayal tried to define him. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with. Went hiking again. Took weekend trips without having to explain myself to anyone. I laughed more. I slept better. I looked in the mirror and saw someone I recognized, someone I respected. The pain, the anger, the humiliation, it didn't own me anymore. They were just scars now. Markers of battles I survived, proof that I could be burned to ash and still rise again. One evening, about a year after Mallory vanished from my life, I stood outside a little cafe downtown waiting for someone who had unexpectedly and beautifully stumbled into my world. Her name was Elise. No complicated history, no hidden agendas, no games. Just someone who smiled with her whole face and listened like every word mattered. Someone who didn't make love conditional or loyalty negotiable. When she arrived, she hugged me like she had been waiting her whole life to find me. And maybe, in a way, she had. We sat by the window, drinking coffee, laughing about small things, making plans that didn't involve survival strategies or background checks. Plans about hiking trips and concerts and lazy Sunday mornings. For the first time in years, I realized I wasn't looking over my shoulder anymore. I wasn't waiting for the next betrayal, the next lie, the next knife in the back. The war was over. And I had won. Not because I hurt anyone back. Not because I became bitter or vengeful. But because I refused to let the worst chapter of my life become the story of my life. Sitting there with Elise, feeling the evening sun warm my skin, I understood something deep in my bones. I wasn't broken. I was rebuilt. Stronger. Smarter. Happier. And most importantly, free.